Hey everyone, I'm Mark. Welcome back to another episode of Off the Mark. Today, we're going to be continuing our series on handgun basics. I'm going to be explaining some basic terms that I'm going to be using throughout the rest of the series, as well as going through some of the very basics of drawing from concealed and from unconcealed in both the very basic of ways. Now, before we get into anything else, we need to go over the 4 basic rules of firearm safety. Number 1, treat every weapon as if it's loaded. Number 2, always keep your firearm pointed in a safe direction. Number 3, keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to fire. And number 4, be sure of what your target is and what's beyond it. Now, before we go any further, I want to make sure that this weapon is clear. So, this is the weapon I'll be using to demonstrate today. As you can see, I drew it and I'm gripping it the same way I showed you before. One-handed though, so that I can control this and demonstrate the rest of it. Now, I have no magazine in here. I also don't have a round in the chamber. As you can see, you can clearly see the light on the other side. So this weapon is safe and we are ready to continue with the instruction. So, what I want to talk about to begin with is sight picture and sight alignment and what the difference between those two things are. I already showed you that my weapon was clear and we went over the 4 basic rules of firearm safety. So, with that said, here is what sight alignment is. Sight alignment is your relation between your front sight and your rear sights and what that's supposed to look like. Sight picture is the relation between your sights and what you're shooting at, what you're looking at on the other side, and what you're aiming at. So the difference is sight alignment is what these 3 are doing. It does not matter what the target is, you're focused on what these are and nothing else. Sight picture is the relation between your sights lining up with what you're aiming at. And I'll show you a little bit of what that's supposed to look like now. So, sight alignment. Sight alignment is a pretty hard thing to show on camera. I'm going to try and get you in close so you can kind of see. I'll probably change the zoom a little bit, get it clear. So sight alignment is what you're supposed to see through here. I'm going to see if I can adjust this to where you can see what I'm supposed to see. There we go. So I'll have to fix that in a minute, but this is basically what you're supposed to see. So this is your sight alignment. You see how my 2 rear sights are aligned? Well, it's hard to get it focused for the camera, but give me a minute. I think I know how to do this. So, sight alignment is how this looks right there. When it's perfectly level in between the sights. That's sight alignment. Now you can be a little bit to the right and that means you'll be shooting to the right. If it's a little bit to the left and it's still in there, it'll be a little to the left. If it's like this, you're shooting down, you're looking over your sights. If it's like this, you're shooting over your sights as well. What you want to be is perfectly lined up like that before you squeeze the trigger. So that is sight alignment. Sight picture is what that looks like when you look through there at the target beyond that. What you should eventually end up seeing is, and I'm going to use an empty magazine to demonstrate, is really you shouldn't see anything. Like if I were looking through here, I should only see the front sight and the target. Really, eventually your goal is that you don't see these 2 in the rear. Your brain will fade them out and you'll see the front sight and the target before you squeeze the trigger. Now what that looks like when you're aiming down sights is you're steady, you've got a good sight alignment. Good, I've got good sight alignment. Now I look, after I've got good sight alignment, at what I'm trying to shoot. So what I'm trying to shoot, in this case, is a little yellow tag right there. So I've got good sight picture, I've got good sight alignment, my stance is good, my hands are in the right place, my grip is solid, and I gently pull the trigger back until it surprises me. That's another thing that's key, is your trigger pull should always surprise you. It shouldn't be one of those things that you're anticipating, because if you're anticipating recoil, you'll see a lot of people kind of do this little dip because they're expecting the recoil to come back. And that will drive their rounds down and either to the left or to the right, because a lot of people don't realize this, but they'll do this, kind of swim. And that's what's causing their sights and their shots to go low left or low right. Now, other terms I'm going to cover are dry fire and techniques you can use at home to practice. Now, what I have here to demonstrate are called Snapcaps. These are not real bullets. They are fake with a rubber tip that you can use to safely dry fire your weapon. Now, do you have to have these? No, absolutely not. But what they allow me to do is simulate malfunctions and other issues that may arise while also having approximately the same weight and feel of an actual bullet. Now, as you can see, this isn't a real primer, and there's a little hole right here so that you know that this is not a fireable round. I will have the link for these or something similar in the description so you can purchase your own. They're not a lot of money, and they allow you to practice in your home for a relatively decent price. I paid like 15 bucks for 10 of these. Yes, it's more expensive than a regular round, but given you can reuse these over and over again, there's a lot of benefits. Now, I've covered Snapcaps and what those are. Now I'm going to put that together with what the term dry fire is. Dry fire is a term you're going to hear a lot in not only my videos, but in other videos that you might see floating around the internet about using guns. Dry fire is how you train without using ammunition. It's a good way to get a good feel for your trigger squeeze and your stance, along with your draw speed and everything else, without breaking the bank and spending a lot of money on ammo. So, how do I dry fire, and will that cause damage to my firearm? No, dry fire doesn't cause damage to your firing pin. There's a lot of myths on the internet about what it is and how it can be used effectively. Well, dry fire is the art of putting everything else into practice without live ammunition. So for this purpose, I've got Snapcaps, I've got my holster and an appendix carry for as if I would be concealed carry, but I'm shirt tucked in so you can see what I'm talking about. So I'm ready to practice at my house. And 3, 2, 1, go. Pull trigger, and then you rack so that you can get a good feel for it. And then you do it again. Act as if you're talking, act whatever. Practice perfect. Sight picture, sight alignment, squeeze, bang. Oh, I'm out of ammo. This is also a good way to simulate malfunctions, but I'll cover that in another video. But Mark, how do I draw effectively? Well, that depends on your stance, how you're going to be concealed carrying, where you're going to be concealed carrying from, all sorts of things. Now, my personal preference and what I'm going to be teaching today is appendix carry, as well as right kidney, like right here, and small of back. I don't have a shoulder holster because I live in the state of Florida, and it's too hot for me to wear a jacket and conceal under here. I might cover those techniques later if I have a holster available for that, but for now I'm going to stick to appendix, kidney, small of back, and then if you're a woman, I'm sorry, I don't have access to a kilt or a skirt and a garter holster to demonstrate having to pull up a skirt or a dress and come from your inner thigh, and I don't like ankle holsters. Personal preference, and that's what a lot of concealed carry comes down to, is what are you comfortable carrying in the most effective way for you? So I'm going to be covering my personal preferences and how to draw from those, but anybody else, basically get comfortable with how you're going to carry and practice drawing, because the functional techniques are all the same. But you need to focus on getting slow, smooth, and fast, and getting good at it all on your own at your most comfortable pace. So, I'm appendix carrying. If I'm going to draw from here, well, I've got my shirt tucked in so you can't see it as if it were concealed. But if something comes up and then you twist out, notice that I immediately pointed that way. I went up and then point that way while this hand is coming up at the same time, and after it meets, I come out. Once again, in that same grip that I used before. So, appendix carry, I come up. Now, when I say come up, I mean that I draw, but my finger stays right here, there. It doesn't ever enter the trigger well until I'm already here. Now, what a lot of people aren't going to tell you is you can shoot decently accurately from right here. It's called point shooting. Point shooting basically means that wherever your index finger and your thumb are pointed is likely where the bullet's going to go. So, if I'm coming up, if somebody's rushing at me with a knife, I might draw and not have time to do a full mate and present, and by presenting I mean coming out like this. I'm not going to have time to do that. But what I can do is point shoot. So I come up, oh, somebody's coming in with a knife, boom. I've already fired a first round, and then I can back up and continue to engage and come out at that. So, that's appendix. It's a little bit trickier if you like to carry in small of back or in your kidney like I tend to do. So for this, let's see if I can get a good spot and angle. So this is small of back. It takes longer to do it this way because I have to now twist around, up. I didn't have that holster secured, but let me get that tucked under my belt like it's supposed to be. There we go. So this is small of back. It takes me a lot longer. Make sure y'all can see that. It takes me a lot longer to come back and then come out. Or I'm going to show this from your perspective. If I were to time this, it would take me a lot longer to go. And I'm slowing this all down from how I normally train to personal defense shoot, so you can see what it looks like doing it slower and getting smoother. Because in reality, adrenaline and other things will boost those response times, and you'll get really good at this if you take it slow and practice the right way. So in this case, notice I came up to the side, whereas the front, I came up here, and then I pushed out because I was right here already. Well, I can't do that in small of back or kidney carry. Instead, it's at to the side, kind of like cowboy stance, and then I'm coming up at the same time to shoot. So what it would look like in full form, if I had enough time to respond to an active shooter or something like that, it's you want this left hand meeting you as soon as it can be, because the two hands make a more stable firing platform. Now, if that's at my kidney instead of small of back, it's a little bit faster, which, by the way, my preferred concealed carry is going to be small of back. Actually, no, it's kidney carry. I don't know why I said small of back. So kidney carry is a little bit like right here. Not quite as far back, but still solid. And this is a little bit easier for me. So it's much the same as the other two, but as you can see, because that's my favorite, I practice doing that a lot more. It's a lot smoother and a lot faster because this is how I carry routinely. And by the way, you're going to get this caught on your shirt at some point. You're going to screw it up. That's why you train. That's why you get good doing this in the comfort of your home before you ever take it out and before you ever put live rounds through it. because the last thing you want to do is draw, forget to index, and have your finger on the trigger as you come out right here. Because you'll end up shooting yourself. So practice all this at home. Get really good at dry firing like I showed you a minute ago, and get really good at just drawing and putting back. Don't even put your hand on the trigger until you're ready. Just remember to draw, get a good sight picture, then go back. But don't put it back until you get a good sight picture. And once you do get a good sight picture, if you've made sure your weapon is clean, clear, and safe, then you can dry fire, and you've got a good trigger squeeze to go with that. So I covered how those looked while my shirt's tucked in, but what if I'm actually concealed carrying? How do I get it out without, getting it caught up in a shirt or any number of things? Well, let's show that off. So I'm actually going to use a smaller holster because it's more comfortable. I'm going to take my weapon light off. Now, I'm concealed. I've got the weapon without the weapon light. This is the normal holster I carry with. You would never know that I'm concealed carrying. That's the point. But your shirt's now in the way. So how do I go about drawing and firing? Well, once again, it's all about what I showed you guys with grip and stance. When you go down, you're going to pick up this shirt, up, lock it in with the V. You want to make sure your thumb is there and you've got a good solid V. Up, V, out. Now, obviously you don't normally want to come up this far. You want to get good enough to where it's boom. But all of that will always take time and practice. So up, make sure you've got a good solid grip before you come out. The last thing you want to do is fumble it and drop it on the ground. Because trust me, the last thing you want is to give somebody who's coming to hurt you or your family the opportunity to do more harm to your family. And unless you're really good at jiu-jitsu or any number of things, you don't want to do a ground fight over a gun. Appendix carry, boom. Now, with small of back or kidney carry, it's going to be much the same, oddly enough, because you're not going to lift up the back of your shirt. You're actually going to go up and over to draw. And you're going to get really good at one-handed drawing, up, over, boom. Another thing to remember is that you're not likely going to put that weapon back in the holster after you've drawn it for a self-defense scenario. So, anyway, now this is all while wearing a t-shirt. It's a lot easier to do it if I'm wearing an overshirt, and I'll show you that in a second. Now I've got an overshirt. That, oddly enough, makes it a little bit easier to draw than if you're just wearing a t-shirt, especially if you're doing small of back carry or kidney carry like I am. So, as you can see, when I grab and drag over, it completely clears the weapon so that I can draw. And also, I've found that it's a little bit easier to get a full, nice grip with your thumb from small of back and kidney than I have on appendix. But that said, as long as you've got good ability and you know how to do this, appendix is a little bit faster. It's going to be faster always. There are pros and cons to each concealed carry technique. So you're going to want to get a good holster and get comfortable just walking around your house and having your firearm on you. Now, I would make sure it's not loaded most of that time, but one of the goals should be to understand how your body functions and how to not draw attention to the fact that you are concealed carrying if this is your first time getting into that world. So if you need to act like you don't notice it, because most people aren't going to notice you concealed carrying until you point it out. Now, there's something to be said for printing and smaller guns and stuff like that, but those are arguments made for other things. Now, if you aren't going to be concealed carrying, but are instead going to be open carrying because you got a handgun for hunting purposes and you just want something to defend yourself if wolves or coyotes or anything like that get you and all you've got is your bolt action hunting rifle, I'll cover that draw here in a second. Now for the open carry draw, this is the easiest draw that I've got ever because it doesn't involve moving your shirt, it doesn't involve anything but up, out, boom. It's what I showed you with the revolver times 2 or 3. In this case, I've got what's called a level 2 holster in that I actually have a button to push down on that requires me to let it go. If I just try and pull, this weapon's not coming out or coming loose. Whereas with a basic Kydex concealed holster, you don't have that problem. Partly because, yes, this will retain and hold it like this all day long, but you need to be able to draw that fast, and as long as it retains while you're moving around, that's all you need. But if you're open carrying for any reason, you don't want anybody to be able to just take your weapon. And a level 2 is the bare minimum I recommend if you're gonna be open carrying. Level 3 is better. They've got a little hood that pops up over it, and you kind of push that down, and it guides you to it. But if you're gonna be open carrying, it's probably the easiest of them all because you can already be moving your left hand over to come up while you're down here almost. Also, this is the best way to hip fire because you shoot here and then you can come up shooting. So I'll cover live fire drills and situations to do as we get further on and we actually get to the actual range days. But for now, this is just a snap cap. Like I said before, that's what I'm demoing. So you can point shoot from right here. You can point shoot from here. You can point shoot from here. You can point shoot and technically shoot effectively anywhere from here all the way up to here. Now, if you're going to be hip firing and somebody's really close to you, well, there's a tip of putting your thumb against the back of it so it fires, but then you're going to run into your first malfunction. Because if your thumb is against the slide, you can only fire 1 round. And if you can only fire 1 round, that means that you now have to rack to chamber your next round. So, once again, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Up and then come out. And notice, you can do this casually. I'm not even in a full stance for drawing practice because a lot of the time you're not going to be in a spot where you can drop into a, oh, look at there, Weaver. Oh, look, somebody's coming at me. Let me square up. Sure, you might have time to do that. A lot of times it's going to be a, oh crap, step back, fire. And you might be firing from here and then continue firing as you come up and as you back up. You don't want to be moving forward at something until you're sure that you've got a safe distance between you and they're either running away or they're gone. By the way, out of snap caps, clear again, boom. Final tips, thoughts, tricks, things that will help you improve in all of this. 1, get a good belt. I recommend something that's 1.5 inches and is not thick, but is rigid, at least a little more rigid. Because if something's floppy, then it won't get a good retention on one of these. Especially if you're going to be carrying around your hip and on a belt, get a good belt that one of these can clip onto and hold really well. If you're going to be concealed carrying some other way, like with a belly band or something like that, where it's an elastic band that kind of comes up here and hugs you, get good and comfortable with pulling up your shirt and then going out. What it comes down to is there's 1.5 million different ways to concealed carry. Get good and comfortable with the one that you want to utilize. I can't tell you how to conceal carry. I can just advise you on the steps to make it more comfortable and effective for you. So with that said, thank you for watching this episode of Off the Mark. Tune in next time to continue on with handgun basics. Next up, malfunctions.